Well, let's go on to my next question here. Can you tell us about some specific topics that you think would be pertinent to Alzheimer's disease and dementia that you have in your book?
Yes, I'm a little prejudiced, but I think every page on Dare to Care, that the caregiver can actually find a topic that is useful to caring for a person with Alzheimer's or dementia. Now, in my chapter that specifically talks about memory loss care, that teaches the families new to the diagnosis. It's not written as an all-inclusive, this is what memory loss care is. So it talks about the basic terms and definitions that the families will be hearing. The types and causes of dementia are described. The progressive stages of Alzheimer's disease are listed. This is taken directly from the Alzheimer's Association that talks about the beginning stage, mid-stage, end stages. And also I stress the importance of general supervision and crisis intervention. Typically, when you're new to it, all of a sudden you find out about it. It sneaks up on you, and you find out that, oh, Mom's going to need some general supervision now. I did some volunteer work at an adult day health care center. What I did is in the afternoon, I did puzzle activities with an elderly gentleman. He was an engineer as well, and he had Alzheimer's disease. And we had the greatest time with a puzzle of the United States. This man could name all the states, and he definitely knew where they all went, and he got such an accomplishment of finishing that puzzle in the afternoons. But what happened is that his daughter would pick him up at the end of her workday, and I would visit with her when she came in, and I found out that, like me, she was a sandwich caregiver. She had kids in junior high, and when her mother died, her father moved in with her family. This is just such a typical story. She had really no idea of her father's memory loss because her mother hadn't really gone too much into this. This was before I wrote Dare to Care. And so in my memory loss chapter, I wrote several topics that I had discussed with his daughter about caregiving for her dad. What I find is knowing what to look for or expect from a person who's been your parent but is now rely on your supervision and care is something that the caregiver has to learn. And the person with Alzheimer's or memory loss, I really stress that a safe environment and general supervision is just the key. They don't need as much care as they just need to be watched to make sure that they're not in harm's way. But going back to my cookbook comparison, I do want to tell you there are many blank forms in this book. These forms are meant to be copied and filled out with current information. There's usually an accompanying sample form that kind of gives the person a starting place as to how they would fill it in. And what I'd like to talk about is the Emergency Paramedic sheet. This is found on page 161. And I'm going to go over this sheet. It's basically got the name, address, birth date, and age of your person. It's some insurance information. The most important part of this is you list the diagnosis and medical conditions of your person. So handing this sheet to a paramedic or emergency room doctor, it gives them a clear picture of your person's medical status before whatever you're in for in the emergency. And on this form, there's also a place for contact these people in case of emergency. So if a person was to fill this out, call 911 and hand it to them, when they get there, then this would also have the emergency contact numbers of family, maybe the primary care's number, and maybe any specialist number. And then I've also included little check boxes for attached or copies of my advance directives. Do they want CPR? Do they want a feeding tube? It's very important to give these emergency people your advance directives, and a check mark for a place to attach a copy of my current chart of medication that's being taken. That brings me to another useful form. I call it the current medication chart, and this is discussed in my medication services chapter. This form communicates what medication the person is taking, and it is so important if all of a sudden they're in the hospital, say they're taking Synthroid for their thyroid, that the doctors know that they need to continue taking the Synthroid and at what dosage. So simply, the medication chart is the medication's name, the dosage, when and how often it's taken, and what the medication looks like. When you have multiple caregivers, it's always nice to know what the medication looks like. It's a little round yellow pill, and why it's taken. I supply a lot of helpful forms in the book, both blank and sample, as I mentioned. One of the other forms that goes along with the medication services is a medication log. You're tracking what medications your person's, when you're living at home for the month, you write a little check box on Monday that you gave them Synthroid in the morning and you gave them whatever other medication. One of the things that's real important with people with memory loss is avoiding the medication errors. Another point I wanted to make about the safe environment and medication is it might be a good thing sometimes to actually lock up the medication so that your person can't forget that they took the medication if they're to that point in the stages of memory loss that they wouldn't remember and they might overdose on that particular medication.
I think that's a really good idea. At our memory cafe yesterday, that was brought up that all of a sudden one of the people that has dementia took his wife's pills. She said, it looked like mine, and she's like, he's never done that before, and that's one thing with this disease. Things are constantly changing. And so to lock them up, to put them out of the way and out of sight, so that can't happen. And I know with my folks, I ended up doing the med chart, and then I ended up going to just small little manila envelopes and just putting out what was needed at the time because it just got too complicated for my dad with brain cancer and my mom with dementia to sort through. And so knowing that you have to keep assessing that as that care partner, or as you had hired kind of that local daughter, I love that. Not replacing you, but filling in and watching those things. Those are wonderful forms, and people struggle with those so much. They're really just marvelous forms. Not only the medications, and the paramedic one I thought was great, but you also have one in there for the care plan and the medical records, and that's just such a huge piece of this puzzle. I also loved the chapter on having the home be safe in all rooms. It's like, we've always lived here, of course it's safe, but you really have to have an eye for safety when you become that care partner, don't you think?
Home safety is so important, especially in Alzheimer's where they might not recognize a safety issue.
A lot of homes have throw rugs, and that can be so dangerous. Or lighting or lack of. Other concerns can be the stove, so taking the knobs off the stove or disconnecting it. People with dementia have told me, oh, yeah, I'm not allowed in the kitchen anymore. I've started too many fires. Very common.
It's very common. And getting into cleaning chemicals, too. I mean, how many chemicals have you got under your sink? I suggest that you go ahead and remove them and actually put them up in a place that might not be familiar or lock in a cabinet.
A couple other things I wanted to point out in your book, too, that I really loved was the life story. And, again, that comes with an example in a blank form. You want to tell people about the life story and how that can be helpful?